Welcome to this Premiere Pro tutorial. I'm going to show you how to create custom transitions using adjustment layers and different effects. In this tutorial, we're going to learn the basics of the process of how this is done. And then really once you know the basics, you can go crazy with it. So we're going to be creating this blur transition right here, which is a very popular technique amongst YouTubers and video creators now, this sort of blur transition that includes things like perhaps a zoom or a rotation, which we'll be covering in a more advanced tutorial next. This basic blur transition includes just an adjustment layer and a directional blur effect. So let me just start from scratch. So if I have these two clips and I'm just selecting all of those clips and option dragging over on the timeline, a typical hard cut would just be like this. And so next I'm going to create an adjustment layer. So I can go to the new item button, choose adjustment layer, okay, and then drag this on top of my two text layers. I'm just going to trim the end of this. And in the middle, I'm just going to select the adjustment layer and press M on my keyboard to select a marker for that. And I'll show you why that's important later on. Next, I'm going to find my directional blur effect. You could also use the Gaussian blur or any sort of blur effect, but the directional blur is very easy. So if we apply this to the adjustment layer and then we start playing around with it in terms of blur length, you can see what's going to happen. So the original one I blurred and it was a blur, a horizontal blur. And so I changed the direction to 90 degrees. But for this part of the tutorial, I'll just do a up and down blur. And so it's going to go up and fade into the next one. So what we need to do is set keyframes for this transition. So I'm going to start in the middle where this marker is. I'm going to adjust the blur length to where I think I want it to end or how powerful I want it to be. Something like that looks good, around 116. I'm going to hit the toggle animation button and that sets a keyframe at that point. And I'm going to click the shift and left arrow key button twice, and that jumps 10 frames. And then I'm going to set the blur length to 0, shift right arrow twice, and then twice more, and set that back to 0. So now we have a basic transition. I'm going to select these keyframes now to add a little bit more bounce to it, right click and choose Bezier, and that just ramps up this effect. I think this is a little bit slow, so I'm going to actually go and split the difference. So I'm going to move these keyframes, the outer keyframes, into 5 frames from the middle point or from the actual cut. And so now that's looking a lot better. To really seal the deal, I'm going to add a little bit of a cross dissolve. That's just Command D on your keyboard when you're on a transition, or you can right click that transition and choose Apply Default Transition. I'm going to make this transition about 4 frames. Let's see what that looks like. And so that's how you can start to create custom transitions using a combination of effects, cross dissolves, or things that you apply to an adjustment layer. All right, so that's it for this tutorial. In the next one, I'm going to be showing you how you can use this same technique to create custom rotational and zoom transitions like this.